very proud to introduce Blaise Porter. So Blaise is the Director of Responsible Business for Fujitsu Oceania. Her role includes direct oversight of the organization's sustainability program, as well as collaboration with leads for the responsible business dimensions of community, diversity and inclusion, well-being, and ethical operations practices within Australia, New Zealand, and globally. She's based in Sydney, Australia. All right, well, welcome, Blaise. Thanks for joining us from down under.
Thank you. Good afternoon and good morning to everybody. It's great to be here.
Excellent. Wonderful. And by the way, you have a very cool name, Blaise.
You know, I would love to take credit for it, but that goes to my parents. So.
There you go. I always keep thinking this is like the trail we blaze, right? So, and I know you're blazing trails inside of sustainability and responsible business.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
I have to have a dad joke in every one of these.
Yeah.
You know, it works. So it seems like a long time ago, but it was just less than 3 months when Simon Allen and I were on the Gold Coast launching iMasons, the local chapter there. And that was the last conference that I attended and the last international flight I took before the lockdown. And by the way, my wife and I were very lucky to get out on the last flight from Sydney to get back to the US. So I love Australia, but another 2 months there, I kind of would miss my home. So
you know, it was nail-biting stuff, Eugene. Yeah.
That's true. Well, there are worse places to be. I mean, you know, Australia is pretty cool. So I'd like to start our chat really around COVID-19. And so, you know, this pandemic itself. So can you share what experiences or what it's been like at Fujitsu in this pandemic?
Yeah, so it's been, you know, an interesting time, which is probably the most, you know, overused descriptor that we're currently hearing. But so Fujitsu is an interesting business, and particularly in this region where, you know, we're very much services led. So we've got, you know, data center, we've got an IT help desk, consulting, you know, projects, the whole kit and caboodle. Mm-hmm. And our client base is really diverse as well. So, you know, we've got some clients who are really getting hit hard by this crisis, like airlines, you know, who are obviously doing it tough right now. But we also service, you know, both the major supermarkets in this country and our Australia Post service, which is absolutely getting smashed at the moment because we're all kind of online shopping while we're at home. So we've had, you know, other customers, you know, who are really kind of ramping up to historic highs in their operation. You know, they've never been so busy. You know, we've had our supermarkets with all the kind of panic buying, you know, we weren't immune to that in this country. And basically, like they were saying, you know, they were trying to feed, it was the equivalent of feeding a country of 75 million people. But of course, you know, everything was only built up to service our actual population, which is 25, I think. So, you know, it's been all hands on deck. But all hands on deck from home. So I think everybody's been, I think we've got about 85% of us working from home since early March. And the remainder, you know, kind of skeleton crews in our data center facilities and in our warehouse operations. You know, as Sunita said, with all those full precautions, you might be able to tell by the little bit of art behind me that I'm in the office actually today just for you. So
thank you. Just you.
Yeah, I was able to kind of, almost. Yeah, and come in and see all the little desks marked out where people should be and not be. So it'll be some time before it goes back to a normal working environment, I think.
Yeah, and let's talk about that post-COVID-19 world. What do you think it's going to look like? Do you think it'll be business as usual in the future?
No, not really. I think that's the urge, right? Isn't it? You know, that's everybody's kind of urge to kind of go back to how it was before. Right. But I don't think it will, and I think it'll actually take some time. By the time we get everybody, you know, back at school, by the time public transport is fully operational and everybody's back in the office, you know, there's another few months of doing this. So I think, you know, particularly around expectations about remote working and flexible working in particular, you know, that genie is not going to go back in the bottle. And, you know, certainly as a technology business, you know, we're seeing that already, you know, where we've had businesses, you know, our customers are saying, okay, well, how we ramp up to get to here, but nobody's talking about scaling down.
Yeah, I worry about the second waves and all of those, right? And we just said we have to be smart about it. And so I don't think it's something we should rush back into. I agree. We got to set expectations and realize there's a new normal here. it really is a brave new world that we're facing. And I guess we'll see how this all plays out. So, and look, the economic, impact of the pandemic, I mean, is staggering and should not be downplayed. But on the other side of that, from an ecological standpoint, people are seeing some pretty dramatic climate change, visual results. I mean, for example, in India, they can see the Himalayas for the first time in 30 years because of the reduction in pollution.
Yeah, it's quite astonishing, and
Yeah,
it's an interesting observation. And in some ways, it's a little bit of a look into the future, perhaps. If we get it right, and we're able to decarbonize our energy chains and our transport chains. There's some of those things where you see those beautiful clear skies. That are once in a generation. We see kind of wildlife. Coming back into cities and waterways being clear. It's a little bit of a window into the future of what it could be.
For sure.
If we're able to make some of the shifts that we need to.
Yeah, and I hope we got a taste for it, and then people realize, wow, look at how clear this is. Can we figure out a way to keep this? That's what I'm hoping. So, but let's shift gears. I want our audience to learn a little bit more about you. When you and I talked earlier this month, you shared that your career journey led you to a purpose, driven work choice, right? So how did you get here, and, why does sustainability matter to you?
So I suppose, I've been at Fujitsu for a long time. So I'm coming up to 12 years, and originally started kind of in the delivery arm of our business. And worked my way up, really starting out as an admin position in this company, where I started because I actually couldn't get a job in leisure management, which is what I'd qualified to do. Needed a job, as do we all. So wound up here. So, definitely another person whose career has found them, perhaps.
Right.
And I'd always done, volunteering at Fujitsu around green teams and things like that we had. And back in 2013 it was, Fujitsu every year did something called an eco tour. And we still do this. We take a whole bunch of our employees for all around the world and, go and do something. So this year they were picking up ocean plastic on a remote island. And this year, anyway, in 2013, we were planting trees in a rainforest in Borneo.
Yeah.
And so I went along. It was the first year that opened it up to people who didn't speak Japanese, where they had someone to facilitate for you in English. But there was only 2 volunteers. It was me, and it was a guy called Lee who was actually heading up the sustainability function for Australia at that time. So had the opportunity to kind of know him and learn more about what we were doing in the sustainability space, and to be able to say, look, if there's ever an opportunity to kind of get more involved, then let me know, right? Think of me.
That's awesome.
And that didn't happen until quite a bit later, actually. And actually, I was pregnant on that time at Borneo, so the humidity was a real killer. And it didn't actually, happen. That opportunity didn't arise actually until I was pregnant with my second child, who's now 4. So. And I think, certainly, having that baby, it's almost a little bit of a cliche, isn't it? But it does make you reflect on, the world, that you've brought this new life into, right, that you're responsible for. And, have you done everything you can? And what you're spending 40 hours a week doing, is that really what you want to be spending 40 hours a week doing? So, it was great that it had, really that opportunity to crystallize things for me, to move in a more purpose-centered direction. And so it's been fabulous to be able to make that happen here at Fujitsu and to be able to grow my career in that direction.
I love the story again, because you came as an admin, not sure exactly which direction. Then you went on a trip, a company-sponsored trip, were inspired. You planted the seed with someone. They sought you out and brought you back in, and now you took over the role.
Yeah.
That's just awesome. And I guess your role changed just about a year ago, right? You changed from managing sustainability into responsible business.
Yeah.
Right?
So
tell us the difference between that.
So we've made a bit of a deliberate shift there into, you know, moving from just sustainability and about the environment to looking at, well, what else makes up responsible business. So I directly look after our community sponsorship programs and the work that we do with the community and the not-for-profit sector. And I also directly oversee reconciliation action plans, so working with our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities in this country.
Yeah.
Which is, you know, something that's been a bit new for Fujitsu. So we launched our first action plan in that area, you know, only in 2018. So it's been, yeah, quite a new space for us and really rewarding. And I think, you know, very much reflective of, you know, Fujitsu recognising what the expectations are of the wider society that we live in.
Yeah.
And responding to that by, you know, making sure we have got the right kind of people and programs in place to make those positive impacts and deliver value.
Yeah, and speaking of purpose-driven, I mean, you've done some amazing work with local Indigenous people in Australia, but you've done this by applying Fujitsu technology too, right?
Yeah,
So
well,
I'd love to hear that story. So share with our audience.
I think that's very much our focus, right? It's about saying, well, what is it that we do? You know, what is it that we do well at Fujitsu? And how can we apply that in a way that's, you know, maybe a bit different to, you know, how we would typically apply it. So we've been working with a great not-for-profit here in this country called the Barra Foundation. And actually last year I had the opportunity to go out on country with them and visit an Indigenous community here in New South Wales and take our SnapScan technology with them, which is just, yeah, this is a simple story. It's a little kind of handheld scanner like this, but it's upright. Yeah. So it's quite funky looking, you know, I've got to endorse the product, but it really is. So you get a little scanning beam that comes out of a head, so you can just pop your things under it. Huh. And so we're out there, you know, with the foundation and with this community and scanning in, you know, photos and newspaper clippings and cards and, you know, important documents and things like that, and building a digital archive of this community. And at the same time, the foundation was out there talking to the elders in that space, you know, learning their oral history, you know, about their own lives, you know, their dream lines and the stories that have been handed down from their ancestors, and creating a digital archive that this community had full consent and control over. And then at the end of that, when it was all kind of collated, that archive was put onto e-readers and given to the local school. So it became an ongoing digital resource for that community. And, you know, I love that because it was really simple, you know, it's a really simple way to use this technology. We were actually planning to go out again, but of course nobody's going out at the moment, so we'll do that a bit later on. Yeah. But yeah, it creates, as I say, you know, a digital resource for that community where there is very sadly a digital divide in this country.
Yeah, totally.
Between our Indigenous community and our non-Indigenous community, and, you know, gives us a resource to the school that they can use to engage their students, you know, that's culturally relevant, you know, and help, yeah, kind of engage the students in their learning and keep them in the school.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. You're capturing history that would be lost if it, you know, as they're passing down in verbal history, and that's just really neat. And look, the application of technology is tech for good. You know, I see this, and there's so many ways that tech can be used for good. And you told me about a story that you had, an idea in the back of a taxi about using machine learning, right? Just use machine learning to help identify endangered trees. Can you tell me more?
It's where all good ideas are had, right? In
the back of Uber.
Cabs. Yeah, and yeah, on the way home from networking drinks, and so yeah, it was a conversation between Fujitsu and the New South Wales government. So here in New South Wales, which is the state where I live, we have just, I think it's 980 endangered or threatened species just in this state, which is quite a horrifying number, actually. To the mind boggles. And they'd set up the New South Wales government has funded a big program. It's called Saving Our Species, and it's $100 million over 5 years. So we're now kind of three years into it. And it's, yeah, it's the largest kind of financial commitment of its type in this country. And that sounds like a whole bunch of money, right? Like we've got 100 million, you know, this is great. And then you think, oh, well, we've got 1,000 species, and you quickly kind of do the math and you realize that, you know, you're going to have to stretch every dollar. So
yeah,
they were out there looking for partners to kind of help them do this work. And so we thought, well, you know, is there a way that we could use technology to help with this mission, right? And use what we do well, and just apply it in a really novel setting. So we, you know, have some really great image analysis technology here at Fujitsu. So and we use, you know, AI for that, and we do kind of applications like vehicle license plate recognition, right, for law enforcement, or facial recognition. So we thought, oh, you know, could we use that and then use it to detect endangered species? And they said, oh, well, that'd be great, because, you know, we're thinking of an area, you know, it's up in the Hunter Valley, again, here in New South Wales, and we've got 2 plants that grow there, that grow only there. It's the only place in the world where they grow. And, you know, we think we've got about 500 of this particular acacia tree, and we've got about 300 of this little daisy. And we fly a helicopter up there, and somebody looks out and they go, oh, I think I spot one. And so it's a really difficult way to collect data. It's very expensive, and it's very carbon intensive once you factor in all the helicopter fuel and everything.
Sure.
And they can't always get the helicopter because the government doesn't own them, so they, you know, will rent them or borrow them. So sometimes those helicopters are being used for other things. And then you start factoring in things like, oh, well, they like to do the, you know, acacia and identification when it flowers, because then it's really obvious. But it might only flower for 6 or 8 weeks in a year, you know, when the timing's right. So if you miss that window, then it's done for that year. So we said, okay, righto. So we flew up a drone, and it's a big drone, like a 3-meter drone. You know, it's not just one of these little ones. You know, I had to get flight approval, you know, from the flight approval authority, and mounted that with a camera. And over the 2 days, it took about 5,000 images. And we said, okay, great. Well, we'll tag them all up. So we had, you know, a couple of our hardworking graduates here kind of go through with the rangers and say, like, yeah, we think that's the acacia and that's the daisy, and then use that to be able to train the machine. And as I said, when I kind of told you the story, it was really kind of speculative. And it was one of these initiatives where I was really on the fence, like, I'm not sure if this will work. You know, it's a tree in a forest. How
do you identify? Yes.
But we were able to. You know, we're able to identify both of these endangered species. We were also able to really very accurately identify some invasive species, some weed species that then kind of compete with these natural trees. And, you know, have a ranger out on the ground to verify them, you know, with the full list of GPS coordinates of, you know, where these highly endangered species could be found. So, you know, that was just, you know, tremendously meaningful. You know, enabled them to go out to collect data, you know, collect samples, which is only going to be, you know, more and more critical. I think we've, you know, we're all kind of talking about COVID. You know, but in this country, you know, we came into COVID, you know, on the back of another crisis, which was, you know, the bushfires over summer.
Yeah, no kidding.
And, you know, in fact, the bushfires only in New South Wales, the last one was extinguished on the 4th of March. So it was only, you know, like literally a week or two's downtime before it was like, okay, now you're all sheltering in place. And that was the first time that the fires had stopped in this state since July of the previous year. So, you know, it, I guess to have been able to do that, you know, and we're taking that technology now into looking at how can it help in this big, you know, regeneration and bushfire recovery task. How can we use it to monitor rates of regrowth, you know, both of our native environment, but also these invasive species. You know, there's a big risk that in these areas that have been devastated, you know, we'll see a lot of weed growth and we'll see an incursion from plants that, you know, will seize this opportunity, but, you know, don't provide the habitat and the food, you know, for our native species. So we really try and stamp that out. So it's been great to be able to continue that work, you know, at this time, which is so important.
Yeah, and just, again, tech for good, just across so many levels. And this responsible business is so broad, right? You're just giving a few examples of Indigenous folks using technology across that, and then but let's focus in on Fujitsu and the company itself when it comes down to sustainability, because you've got quite a track record there. Can you just tell us some stats around the company itself?
Yeah, so Fujitsu is actually the second oldest IT company, so behind IBM. And we were founded in 1935 in Japan. And actually, you know, our first factory in Kawasaki, it's still there. But for every tree that they cut down to make the factory, they planted another one on the grounds. So even still, that factory is in park-like grounds, really, is how I would describe them. Yes, there's a really long, you know, commitment, certainly, you know, as a global entity. And in the region, so I look after Australia and New Zealand, more than a decade of just a regional specific practice as well. So our baseline year is 2008. So that's what we baseline everything off.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, that's something that's really important to us. You know, I think it's becoming increasingly important to our customers, but also the investor market as well. So, you know, we were listed this year for the 19th time, I think, on the Dow Jones Sustainability Index. You know, we were on the Carbon Disclosure Project, the A list, for the third year in a row. So, you know, we're really trying, you know, I think really hard in terms of both what is it can we do as an operation, you know, within our four walls, you know, and what can we do to bring all that experience and that knowledge and the things that we've developed, you know, out into the world to create value that society needs.
Yeah, and this, I mean, the Dow Jones Sustainability Index is a big deal. I mean, it's, you know, think about Fujitsu, 132,000 employees, and I believe you've done it for the 20th year, not 19th. Oh. So I think it's just and can you tell us a little bit more about that index itself, that distinction?
Yeah, so I think there's about 10,000 or so companies that are eligible for that. You know, and that looks at, you know, not just the, you know, sustainability value, but social and obviously your economic value as well. So it's a real, you know, kind of triple bottom line assessment. And that, you know, that rating, you know, indicates that we're really kind of up there, you know, in the top percentage, giving that assurance to, you know, not only, as I said, the investor community, but, you know, all of our other stakeholders as well. You know, as I said, that we're doing what we can to confront these really pressing issues, whilst, you know, being good in business as well, right? And delivering, you know, on our economic outcomes.
It's that triple bottom line again, you mentioned. So, and, you know, Fujitsu appointed President Tanaka-san, right? 6 months ago. And I think from you shared with me, he's very focused on connecting to a purpose, hence what you actually have gone through with what you're doing here. And I believe he's been quoted to say that he wants Fujitsu to make the world more sustainable by building trust in society through innovation. Can you share a little bit more about that expanded Fujitsu strategy?
Yeah, that's right. So, yeah, really very clear direction, you know, from Tanaka-san in his new presidential term, which is so exciting. And as he said, you know, that his purpose, you know, for Fujitsu has actually only just been communicated within the last week. So it's hot off the presses here at Infrastructure Masons. So I think what that really looks like is, very much, you know, that tech for good aspect. So that, you know, creating shared value, you know, using technology to deliver solutions, you know, that our customers want because they're solutions that society needs. You know, so that's really the the first part, and the second part is all who we are as Fujitsu. So as you said, there's 132,000 of us, you know, worldwide. We're in, you know, almost every kind of country that you could point at.
Right.
You know, so what does it mean for those people? You know, how do we get everybody kind of pulling in the same direction and collaborating, you know, to these social outcomes? You know, and again, with a strong focus on diversity in the industry, you know, as you were talking about with Sunita, which is it's just such a pressing concern.
Yeah,
I
for
think, you know,
sure.
particularly at this moment in time.
Yep. And again, having folks like you and Sunita in leadership positions, showing exactly what should be done, right? And we just need more and more of this talent in our industry, right? We've got to increase the gender and other underrepresented groups across the board when it comes to what our makeup is of our industry itself. So
Yeah, 100%.
Yep. So D&I is such a big thing that we're focusing on, and we're trying to put our money where our mouth is to see if we can attract people into this industry, because we need to change that mix. But I want to step into the sustainability strategy. You know, just a few weeks ago, we had our America Summit, and we unveiled the iMasons sustainability vision. Every click improves the future. Right. So digital infrastructure contributes to the global economy and society without harming the planet. I would like to get, you know, what that means to you, that vision itself.
I really like this vision. I think I commend you guys because I think you've done a great job. And I, you know, as you said earlier, I think every word in that statement is loaded. But you know, the big takeaway for me is that improve word, right? You know, it's a vision that's not just harm mitigation, right? You know, it's not just be the least bad.
Right.
You know, it's a vision that's actually about, yeah, we're going to take some proactive actions. You know, we're going to do the work. And, you know, I think there's so many things, you know, whether that's from an infrastructure perspective, you know, looking at, you know, energy efficiency, you know, or, you know, look how we use waste heat, using data centers to stabilize the grid, because we know in many parts of the world we're going to be dealing with increased grid uncertainty, you know, as the climate warms. You know, I think there's some really fascinating things there, you know, just from an infrastructure perspective, you know, and then we start to kind of add on all of those things. We'll say, well, what is that infrastructure doing for society? You know, what is it, you know, that it's that it's working on. So I love that that overarching, you know, sentiment and that inclusive nature of that vision.
Excellent. Yeah, we just, you know, it morphed into that after all these leaders came together and started talking through it, and the unifying of that vision, that everybody's behind it and that it's positive. Because we were looking originally at, you know, every click is carbon negative. Okay, great. But it's bigger than that. It has to improve the future. It has to reverse climate change. It has to bring us back into a planet that we had before, instead of us actually going down the wrong path, which we're going down right now. And so, and I want to give just a shout out to the folks here. If you have questions for Blaise, feel free to start putting them into the chat window right now. We got a few more. I just got one more question I want to ask her, and then we'll jump into that. So, last question, Blaise. Do you have a message that you would like to share with our industry?
Yeah, I mean, well, look, you know, I think you've just in your last sentence there really highlighted the scale of the challenge. You know, so we have a massive challenge ahead of us. You know, and I appreciate as well that Infrastructure Masons has put a 10-year timeline on this sustainability vision, because this is an urgent task, right? You know, it's not something, you know, that we can kick down the road. You know, it'll be this professional cohort of people on this call that do the work, right? You know, that sets up our entire society, really, you know, for a society that can be, you know, both prosperous and sustainable. And I think, you know, what I would also end on is by saying, well, look, you know, that's mega. It's obviously humongous. But that shouldn't be, you know, a burden. You know, it shouldn't be onerous. You know, that should be something that excites us, you know, that allows us to say, okay, well, great, let's open our minds, you know, how are we going to do things creatively? How are we going to do things differently? And, you know, really use that urgency and this really kind of fascinating break with the past that we've just had, you know, with this virus, to propel us forward into a better future.
Yeah, absolutely. It's whether it's the Indigenous community to every community around the world, we have to do some different things to change what's going on. This is not something you fix overnight. So well said. And by the way, we never should waste a crisis. I use that a lot. There's got to be a way to leverage this to make a true change for the future. So hence this sustainability strategy is really timely, right? And the fact that we got people behind it. So I'm really excited about what it's going to become. So we've only got a minute for a question here. I've got one from Raymond Tong over in Hong Kong. And he said, great stories from Blaise. I can feel your strong passion in this sustainability topic. How do you bring this passion into your whole company? Everyone has been many business targets, sales, product launch, etc., to meet and always says, I'm busy. How do you get them excited and join forces with you? Great question.
It is a great question. And I think that there's a variety of ways. And I think, certainly for me, number one is I'm always communicating. So I'm always, talking or, making material that people can read or, doing video updates and things like that and telling the story. I think number two is we've got to demonstrate, why it's important to customers, and what do customers want. And customers are moving in the same direction too, and whether we see that in an RFT or whether we see that, in the questions that they ask of me personally, which they do, which I always appreciate. Let me write that one down.
Yes.
To show that it's, really critical to our business and to what Fujitsu is all about, to be able to take actions in this space. And I think, but just in general, people want that connection. Most of us are not spending 40 hours a week to just clock off on a Friday night and say, see you all later.
Right.
People want that, so the more that we can, do these things and tell some of these stories about how we Fujitsu are using what we're good at and how everybody then is contributing, to making the world a better place, people are ready to go with you on that journey. You just have to show them where to go. And
so this goes right back to the very beginning that you said, purpose-driven. So you've got a company and, a president and everyone else that actually is focused on the purpose of that and using tech for good. And so I think that, that sparks, that just gets people motivated. So thank you again, Blaise. You are blazing new trails. I really appreciate the interview. This is, I keep up the incredible work. Keep saving the planet, one tree at a time, one tech at a time. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.